United States submarine base at Key West, Florida. A dispatch that quoted President Truman's press secretary, Charles Ross, as saying that President Truman has no knowledge of any secret project by this government that would give substance to the existence of such objects. Ross also said that both the Air Force and the Navy deny that such objects exist.
14 months as an anti-aircraft observer with a certified battery, and also 18 months as a seacoast anti-aircraft observer with another certified battery. I was driving north March 21st on 101 highway at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when my attention was distracted by the sunlight reflecting off the
roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Here we are, Esoteric America, coming to the people with just the little tongue twister, just the co-hosts, just the four of us, 3 cameras, 4,
just the 4 of us,
4 brilliant
Just
people.
the 4 of us.
There you go.
We will make it if we try.
A musical accompaniment by Roman Merrill. And of course, he's the host of the Rising from the Ashes podcast. You can also find him with a bunch of great stuff on his Patreon, a bunch of solo content there. You can also find him somewhere and maybe on your local corner selling some homemade incense and other things. We also have Chad here. Chad, the man behind Stargate Detroit. What's up, Chad? How are you today, bro?
Hey guys, doing awesome. Looking forward to a show tonight.
Right
I
on.
was really inspired by Emily Moyer last week and have been going down the rabbit hole ever since. So looking forward to seeing what you guys got to share tonight and showing you what I got to share.
Right. And as
I'm
we
digging this new platform idea that we're gonna be pulling off. I really am enjoying this concept.
Well, and I was just about to say, for people who might not have caught that part of the last episode, we are going to be doing 4 episodes a month, hopefully, and 3 of those episodes will be with just us 4 going into the research, whatever town or city we choose, maybe even a route, maybe a river, maybe a mountain. I mean, we're really not specifically set on just what do they call them? Regulated city zones, right? Like we could take this into more abstract territory as well. But anyways, today we're going to look at Austin, Texas to continue all the fantastic things that we found that Emily shared with us on the last episode. So can I get into the history, guys? You want to say anything before we get into this?
Break it off, man.
Cool. So, for people who don't know where Austin is, obviously it's the capital city of Texas. You may find out as we get on earlier or later on here that Austin, Texas wasn't always the capital of Texas. But what's really interesting is humans have been living in this area, specifically on the Colorado River, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Some of the oldest archaeological finds are actually in Travis County, which is a part of the county that Austin is a part of. So it goes back, some dates go back over 11,200 years, so 9,200 BC. They've studied the Galt site, which is near Georgetown and Fort Hood. and they've also studied the it's called the Balcones Fault. And I guess there's been a bunch of archaeological digs. There's also amusement park called Wonder Cave, where maybe the early inhabitants would have lived inside of this cave and along this fault line. It's interesting because the Wonder Cave is called an ancient cave. It was formed thousands of years ago. And I think one of the dam projects actually went and flooded this area, but that dam didn't hold up for very long. But anyways, before European settlers arrived in the area of Austin, there were a couple of different tribes. The Tonkawa tribe inhabited the area. The Comanches and the Lipan Apaches, a certain group of Apaches, were known to travel through the area. And then some of the first Europeans were Spanish missionaries who originally settled in Austin but found San Antonio more suitable. But the Comanches are kind of interesting. They have a whole sort of lore around them being kind of fierce. Some propaganda says they were cannibals. I don't know how true that is. But they're a particularly rough group of Native Americans, and so are the Apache, right? Like the Comanche and the Apache both have like big reputations for being tough and warriors, at least in the history we're given. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool, considering Texas carries that spirit through with their bravado. You know, Texans have a definite sort of machismo about them, right? And it's funny I use that word because most people probably know Texas was once a part of Mexico. It's actually been a part of 6 different nations, hence the some of the designs that we'll see later on when we look at the Capitol building. But I found it kind of disappointing that they didn't recognize the Native American peoples in that 6th seal. I think the other monuments on the state capitol probably reinforce this assumption that maybe the people of Texas at that time didn't consider Native Americans civilized, right? So they probably wouldn't have considered their, people a part of any nation, unfortunately. But the Tonkawa tribe exists today in Oklahoma, so they've spread much further than where they initially were from in that Colorado River area where Austin now sits. And another interesting thing that I found is in Gregory Little's Mound Encyclopedia. He talks about the southwestern extreme of the mound building culture being in this general area. Maybe not specifically in Austin, but there are mounds in Texas. I wasn't able to look at the map and see where they are in relation to Austin, but maybe when you guys get on with what you have to present, I'll look that up and concur. But yeah, I think Austin has a strange kind of history, considering that Houston was once the capital of Texas, and it was sort of disputed over whether Austin or Houston would be the capital. They have had capitals of the Texas Republic in over 4 or 5 different areas, one of them being Galveston, Texas, which is on the coast. And I think that was this Galveston little tangent I took warrants a whole episode in itself, because Galveston, aside from having a giant blue pyramid, it seems like it has pretty important history as well. So I wasn't able to get too far into Galveston, but before we go too much further, I just wanted to point that out, that Austin, Texas has not always been the capital of Texas. There's been several different places where they had a capital for the different groups that ran Texas. Now, where Austin currently is used to be known as Waterloo, which is interesting because Waterloo is a Dutch word, and it correlates with the area that Austin is. It means like a shallow river in a forest, right? So that's probably what Austin looked like when they founded it. And as I said, they selected Austin. It was disputed over. And the original planner of the city of Austin based his plan off of the Philadelphia city plan. And I'll share my screen and show you guys a little bit of what I just talked about, back it up with some images here, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, just a side note too, while we're getting this ready. Galveston, yeah, I found some stuff in Galveston and I was like, oh, we're sticking to Austin, but I found some interesting stuff, and lo and behold, Texas in general is full of juice, like full of esoteric juice, and I'm excited to get into more of the regions at a later date.
Yeah, for sure. So we have my first slide up here. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
So this is sort of the general
Yep.
estimations on where different groups of Native Americans lived up in the sort of, can you guys see where my pointer is? Yeah. This is where those pyramids would have been, which is not, Texas is huge. So to say that's close to Austin is kind of a generalization, but in comparison to how far it could be, it's relatively close, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this, where the Tonkawan name is along the Colorado River, I think Austin's somewhere in this area. And yeah, those would be the major groups that were here before Texas and became Texas. And I think this is extremely important, because some of the most esoteric history is the Native American history. It's some of the most fascinating stuff too, as you probably know if you're a listener of this show. We like to focus on the mounds and what they mean, and the Caddoan civilization, that I think this is the Trinity River or something that they were near. I don't know what that says right there near where it says Neches, but they had mounds that looked a little different than what we would consider like the Ohio River Valley mounds. Like these kind of looked almost more stepped, like they had steps.
Ziggurat style?
Almost. It was more like a thatched roof even. Like it wasn't a complete step as much as it was like a diagonal line. But yeah, it is definitely something that I don't normally associate with Texas, right? Mounds. So certainly qualifies as esoteric. Let's see. As I was saying, here's the seals. We have the Kingdom of Spain first kind of making its official presence in Texas. We also have the Kingdom of France, and it's interesting, French, they didn't really stick around in Texas that long. They sailed down the Mississippi and set up a fort, and I think Spain or maybe even the Mexicans kicked them out. They had some kind of war. The French didn't really stick around that long. And then Mexico, obviously, the Republic of Mexico lasted for a little while in Texas. I mean, the Alamo is probably the most famous battle from that time period, right? The Alamo was a group of Texans from the United States, and some were from Germany, some were from other countries who were fighting against the Mexican government. And then we have the Republic of Texas, the Confederate States of America. Obviously, Texas became part of the Confederacy during the Civil War. But before the Civil War, it was a part of the United States. So that's kind of, I don't know, geometrically tantalizing. The symbol, you have like the double five-pointed star. You have what kind of looks like a teddy bear. I don't know what that is right there in between the two wreaths. Maybe it's a skull and crossbones.
Can you zoom in?
I might be able to zoom in. Let me see. Even if I zoom in, it doesn't really help with the clarity. But yeah, no. I don't know what that is. We'll have to find another picture of that and look into it further. But before I go too much further, here's the basic rough sketch, so to speak, of what Austin looked like in 1839. Here's that city plan I was talking about. You see, it's based on the Philadelphia city plan, specifically how Philadelphia is built between the Delaware and the Schuylkill River. They built Austin right in between the Shoal and the Waller River, which Waller was the guy who drew this map up on the left. Edwin Waller is the city plan surveyor guy who created this map that you're looking at on the left-hand side. And you sort of see the similarities in the grid, but I think the major similarity is the fact that he situated Austin in between two rivers. Not as big as the Delaware River, but definitely two rivers. And I think esoterically, that is a theme that we're going to see with a lot of these important cities, is that they're situated on rivers. So, and then we get into the Capitol building. So I'll stop there until we start talking about the Capitol building later. But yeah, what do you guys think so far? Did you guys dig up anything about the Native American?
I didn't get much into a lot of the indigenous history there, though I know it's incredibly thick. Like some of the just main archaeological stories of the peoples of, let's call it ancient Texas, date back to, tens of thousands of years, saying that people of Asian genealogy crossed through the Bering Strait, found their way in Texas, and inhabited the lands for tens of thousands of years. And some of like the oldest archaeological digs that we have in North America survive in Texas. And that is kind of the story that they even give on just the Austin Wikipedia page, that some remains were found there specifically. But that was kind of interesting. I got a couple. Is the screen sharing good?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is the Shoal Creek Indian Massacre site. Oof, brutal. Shoal Creek is a microcosmic view of all the trials, tribulations, and peculiarity that assailed the Wild West during its heydays and painful years of expansions. Along the banks of the stream, an urban watershed encompassing more than 12.9 square miles, you can dig out all sorts of salvage tales and unearth all manner of sinfully pernicious stories. It is a place coursing, not with any tributaries, but with links to the frontier passions that drove Austin into what it is now. The creek is notable for its links to the history of Austin and Texas, and for the plucky ghost hunter. It is also famous on accounts of bizarre stories and paranormal incidents. The creek and its regions are an esoteric focal point for some of the Providence's most iconic and active specters. A history of Shoal Creek. A detailed description of all that has happened along the creek would need, at the very least, a couple of blog pages, a lunch break, and an attention span of an academic professor. Things I doubt normal readers of this blog have in abundance. With that in mind, I'm going to whiz by and give you a flyby of all the naughty bits of historical events and dastardly tales that called this place their own. Arrowheads confirm that the area was inhabited by Native Americans way before the arrival of Europeans. Artifacts uncovered telltales of the tribe discord and gang dispute between different factions of natives that go all the way back to 9000 BC. Near Old McCall Spring, just west of the street now called Balkan's Trail, that's how archaeologists designated a zone, that was once an ancient Native American burial mound. In 1838, settlers lived along the creek's mouth. They were an offshoot of the Dewitt colony. What Austin was previously called Mirabeau Lamar, the second president of the Republic of Texas, was one of its most famous residents. The settlers were continuously harassed and haunted by Comanche warriors. Many lost their lives during this period. 1850, after the Civil War, General George Armstrong Custer, commanding the 2nd Wisconsin and 7th Cavalry, was assigned to Austin. They were a peacekeeping force meant to enforce the edicts of the Reconstruction era. Custer's men camped out on the banks of Shoal. A great deal of them died of cholera, and some of them are still buried by the creek.
It's pronounced cholera, Roman.
Oh, that's right. That is right. Cholera. 1890, rumors surfaced of a buried Spanish treasure that was hidden in the area. The region became a bustling hive of activity, and hundreds trespassed into the different properties that called the creek their home. Home invasions became a fad, and dozens of persons were violently killed during the treasure hunt. Split Rock, between 29th and 31st Street, became a hideout for outlaws and desperados. It was one of the best cubbyholes in the West. In 1956, numerous cottages were set ablaze by pyromaniac, and to this day, the identity of the arsonist remains a mystery. The Shoal Creek Indian Massacre. In 1839, against fair warning, a farmer named Gideon White decided to build a home close to the banks of Shoal Creek. And even by then, the place had a sinister mojo to it. You just felt that something was off. By then, the creek had a reputation. A couple of years back, Mrs. Sarah Hibbins, who had been captured by the Native Americans when crossing the Colorado River, was chased by her captors through the tributaries of Shoal Creek. When they couldn't recapture her, the natives disemboweled her husband and tossed him into the creek. To say the place had bad juju would be underselling the madness. Anyway, Gideon and his family went and moved into their newly constructed house. They found their bodies 3 years later in 1842. His corpse had been beaten to death by a passing band of natives. But here's the kicker. When they started digging a grave right on top of where Gideon's body was killed, the neighbors came up on a shocking sight. There was an unearthed mass grave right under their feet. Previous settlers, the majority of the graves were victims of cholera and yellow fever. But the first few bodies, the ones on top, showed signs of violence. Shoal Creek, given us some of its historical factoids, it's nothing more than a den of demons and devils, the literal type. There's a scenic running and biking route that runs right near where Gideon was killed. The thing is that the trail is closed right before 10 p.m. This is rather uncommon for public lands. Authorities claim that pedestrians are not permitted inside for their own safety. Many think it's because of the inordinate amount of supernatural activity. Shoal Creek has been the site of numerous documentaries, series, and reality shows about ghosts and the like. YouTube is flooded with videos claiming to have caught some of the restless spirits that haunt this place.
So is that about the whole river, or just one part of Shoal Creek?
Just one specific part of Shoal Creek, where right where the house was built.
Okay.
And I don't like how much they bash and brutalize the natives in a lot of those stories. So obviously there's a lot more going on there than, white people getting disemboweled by natives. But that was the story that I found on that. So anybody listening that lives in Austin, I'm sure you're well aware of Shoal Creek.
Well, I definitely think the fact that Texas was a part of the Confederacy made a big impact on the narrative that's given about the Native Americans. I mean, there is this sort of like tendency to equate them with Stone Age people because of the age of the archaeological sites that are found, and then make the assumption that because the people had the same general tools and things found with them in that very far time period as they do maybe even as recently as the 1500s, there's this assumption that, they didn't develop any technology, they didn't evolve the same way the rest of us did, which I think, first of all, you can't just make an assumption like that without being there. It's something sociological can't be, based purely on physiological or physical evidence, right? So until we have a time machine and we can go back and see how the Native American culture actually was, we can't really say that they were, unevolved or backwards. And unfortunately, that's kind of what we get from some of these, you know, like plaques and stuff that commemorate certain areas tend to take the focus off of the people and more on the land, or even on the person who discovered it, or the archaeologist who discovered it, right? They tend to emphasize them over the people. It's just, I mean, it's subtle, but it's definitely noticeable. One really old find in Texas, within relatively close to Austin, in a suburb of Austin, Cedar Park, they found the Leanderthal lady, which, Neanderthal lady, Leanderthal lady. And I don't think that, like, the idea that this was a Neanderthal, like, that's a vestige of a type of archaeology that's now probably considered somewhat racist, because of, like, that tendency again to think that all the Native Americans were backwards in Stone Age. And so, I mean, who knows, if this was found today, they might not have even called it the Leanderthal lady, but this was discovered in the 80s, and it is in Texas. So yeah, I think, nothing against people in Texas, but it's like kind of evident when you go to the state capitol that there's a Confederate element to the Texas culture that can't be overlooked. It's definitely had an influence. It definitely had an influence during this time period when a lot of these things were unearthed, right? So
no doubt. Let me touch on that too, because when we get into the founders of, before we go into like the capital state stuff, just to give a little bit more backbone on the history of the town, and another building and stuff I wanted to get into is the University of Texas in Austin. That is where I came into a lot of these like name sinks. Like what I mean by name sinks is like generally a lot of times when I'm looking into the histories of towns, like when I was really getting into it with Florida and all these other places, I would find that people just had the same name and a lot of times the same initials. And it kind of blew my mind. I'm like, why are all these people's names like the same? And I'm sure there's a reason to it that isn't so crazy or mysterious. But it is in fact a thing. So I'm not going to just read these word by word here, but I do want to share with you guys the just the pages that I'm pulling a lot of the sources from. This is Elijah E. Myers, is the guy who was the architect for the Capitol building. So this is Stephen F. Austin, and this is Moses Austin, Stephen's father. Moses Austin was a avid miner, and he wasn't from Texas originally. They were up from they were from up north, and they had quite a lot of success. They were in the lead industry and secured a land grant from the Spanish government. Later, after, let's look at this picture. Where's it at here? Oof. Okay, let's find it right down here. So that the Adams-Onis Treaty, which really struck me because it just looks like Adonis, the Adonis Treaty. Adonis plays a big role in theological history and occult history as being one of these like high appreciated, like it, not necessarily a creator god, but I've heard of a lot of like Adonis worship in different occult circles. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I kind of saw this and I automatically, my mind went Adonis.
Was he connected to that swan story myth about the swan that gets turned into a man, I think?
He's like directly connected to, Adonis is directly connected to the other Greek goddess with an A. Oh, goodness. Come on, help me out, guys.
Athena, Aphrodite.
Aphrodite and Adonis were almost interchangeable after a certain point. So I'm not super familiar with that story that you're talking about.
Oh, that was just my guess.
Okay, cool. Well, either way, that's something I thought was interesting, and it kind of ties in here later with some of the Greek.
Moses Austin was born in Connecticut. What are the odds?
Yeah. Okay. So that's where it was. I forgot where he was born. So you can go on Masonry Today. It's a Freemason website to find a lot of famous Freemasons in history. And here it has Moses Austin's information because he was a part of the Freemasons, right? And back at this time, you know, for people to remember, like they said that there was about 1 in 5 adult males were a part of a secret society.
Wait,
that's
hold
how
on.
common. That's how common it was at this point.
This guy was his father, not his brother.
Yeah. So Moses Austin was putting in the work, right? They basically had to evade the town that they were living in due to these debts. They had a lot of debts that they worked themselves up to, even though they had a lot of money from the lead industry. They actually had to evade town to avoid going to jail. They had to flee the area to avoid jail. And Moses Austin fled to what would one day be considered Missouri and the upper Louisiana, which was controlled still by Spain. And he was still looking to get into the mining business, and he surveyed many of the mines in that area. And finally in 1798, he was given a land grant by the Spanish government in exchange for his declaration of allegiance to the Spanish crown. And then in 1803, Missouri became part of the United States after the Louisiana Purchase, and Austin would become the principal stockholder of the Bank of St. Louis. And then the Panic of 1819, the first financial collapse of the United States, which is almost hilariously exactly 1 century before we would start finding that same exact thing happening to the Great Depression, just a couple of years before. And so after that, and he found himself broke yet again, Austin turned again to the Spanish crown to remake his fortune. He traveled to Spanish-controlled Texas and sought out another land grant, this time to create an Anglo-American colony in the region. So you got to imagine, right? Like after already failing in the lead industry and getting a land grant by the Spanish crown, then that falling under, then getting another land grant. The guy had a lot of sway. He had a lot of push, and he obviously had like a lot of friends because in order to get 2 land grants and get given multiple opportunities. So Moses Austin actually eventually passed away, and then his son Stephen F. Austin, who was actually known as the father of Texas. That's literally what he's known for here, being the father of Texas. He is he was the founder of Austin. He basically was who it was all dedicated towards.
Well, he didn't found Austin. He didn't found it. They named Austin after him. I don't know if he was even involved in Austin ever, because I don't know if it was around when he was alive. Does it say that? I mean, it sounded to me like they just named
so
it after him.
he was a part of it. Okay. Because he was alive. Let's see, he was born in 1793 and he died in 1836. So yeah, I guess it was still technically before it all. But he was him and his father played such large political roles in basically being the founders of modern Texas in a sense, like, you know, in the sense of like they had their family legacy and a lot of money and political sway into these things. And so it's a pretty deep story. But a lot of the thing I was getting into is that we were talking about, like Texas being like part of the Confederacy. And then, I'm gonna stop sharing because I'm kind of getting distracted. So they're being a part of the Confederacy, and George Hamilton and another George Washington. There were 2 George Washington characters. George Washington being the middle name, not the last name, but obviously a homage to one of the nation's most famous Freemasons. They had a lot of tiff when they were starting the University of Texas about like separating the school from race. I mean, they weren't even allowing black people to be a part of the college, obviously, in the very beginnings of it. And they, the Brown versus Board, which happened in Texas, not at UT, but it happened just up the road. And other tiffs where basically like the Confederacy stronghold was in the Texas schooling system by saying, hey, you know, we're going to have segregation and we're going to keep slaves. And a lot of the people who they considered regents, and I had to look what this word regent meant, but it means like in control, or you're in a position to create decisions at that time being. So you don't ever get put on for being the president of the school. You don't ever get put on for being the person who created the school, but you're a regent. So you funded $18 million to this university, but you're just a regent for a time being. So technically you're not really a big part of history. And I think that's how they were able to sweep a lot of these supreme racist political beings under the rug by them never actually being a part of the board, but being a part of the regency, who funded the entire school anyway. And so yet again, just like a lot of other places, you know, that have a lot of death and a lot of these types of energies tied to it, slavery being, you know, one of those energies. You have a lot of paranormal and ghost sightings all throughout Austin, all throughout the college, all throughout the Capitol building, even I found, and a bunch of other, and like the creek sides and everything, like we discussed earlier. But I'll stop for now because my mouth is very full and I'd like to digest this information.
Well, I'll add to the Stephen Austin thing that he helped bring slavery to Texas. I don't know if you mentioned that or not.
There we go.
But yeah, I thought that was sort of important. And he also imposed on the Karankawa people, right, who were some of the earliest inhabitants of the area. They were attacked by Stephen Austin and his gangs to sort of solidify his land grant that he had on Austin. So there was the Skull Creek Massacre. There was the Tonkawa Massacre that Tara brought up earlier, the Shoal Creek Massacre that you described, Roman. And yeah, it was definitely a betrayal. The Karankawa felt like the Spanish were going to help them, the Karankawa disliked the Spanish just as much as the Texans did. So they were like, "Hey, what the heck? We're on your side." And yeah, so a lot of bloodshed filtered through the land and into the creeks, into the soil of Texas. But it's kind of interesting that Moses Austin comes from Connecticut, because there's a guy, Tara just reminded me, a very famous architect named Henry Austin from New Haven, and he designed a bunch of the important buildings in New Haven. He also designed some stuff in Middletown, Connecticut, and in New York City. So I don't know if they're related, but you know, those kind of names tend, like the fact that he has a New England name is kind of telling, right? Because there's a bunch of these old New England families that went on to control the rest of the country. Here we have, you know, this guy Moses Austin pleading to his son on his deathbed to start a settlement in the Spanish Mexican territory, and he does. He fulfilled his father's wish, but I wonder if him being from Connecticut maybe inspired him at all, because many people don't know that our Connecticut charter inspired the Constitution. Connecticut almost fell under New York's power during the pre-revolutionary days, but we hid our charter from the British agents in a oak tree, and when the revolution was starting, we were like, hey, let's use this some of these laws from our charter. We've governed ourselves for over 100 years using this thing. So and that guy was around in Connecticut at that time. So I don't know. Texas maybe owes a little bit of a thank you to Connecticut for giving it some of that rebellious FU independent spirit. I don't know. We kind of have that here too in Connecticut. But anyways.
I feel like Texas, and this is obviously complete speculation, but I feel like since it wasn't necessarily a part of the United States at that point, they were like, we can go still hold a lot of our, we can go have slaves, we can have sugar crops, we can have huge crops, we can get this because it's still part of the Spanish, and the Spanish are complete bastards. By the way, sorry about it. The conquistadors are not my favorite group of people. But I feel like, there's a huge Masonic influence between, there's that tie between the American Masons and the different organizations that were tied to the Spanish crown and the money and treasures that were tied behind that. So I feel like there's a lot more we can really pull up when we're talking about this history of Texas. And
we got next week's episode too, right? So
when I was looking into the history of San Francisco, I was trying to find who the actual city was named after, and I found that I had multiple answers. And so I was like, okay, who is this Saint Francisco?
Saint Francis,
just to give and it is Saint Francis, right? Of Assisi was one of them, but
the saint who could speak to animals. Saint Francis is he's the guy who right, he spoke to animals. He was a friend of everyone. Saint Francis. Among the saints is probably one of the cooler saints in my opinion.
Follow the heart.
Really, really
tarot card.
Sweet, nice guy. Oh, sorry, Tara. Go ahead.
I was just saying, in this deck that I have, the Ascended Masters deck, he's the Follow Your Heart.
Oh,
card.
And that being said, San Francisco is still built on massive shell mounds by the indigenous people and completely desecrated the waterfront where it was a rich full of sea life. But the point I'm getting at is there's multiple stories of just where the name came from. And St. Francis of Assisi is absolutely one of the number ones. But that being said, there's still conflicting stories as to where the name came from. And it's not necessarily the case with Austin, right? Because we have Moses and Stephen Austin. But Austin itself etymologically comes from the name Augustine. And St. Augustine of Hippo, we know, is a huge culprit in the conquistadors in the Spanish world. St. Augustine being one of the first cities founded in the Americas was a Spanish colony.
Right.
And so I think it's funny that there's, this Spanish stronghold on Texas and the history of Texas, but the family that founded it and got paid homage are the Austins. But Austin is a direct correlation to Augustine, which is a direct correlation to Saint Augustine, who is a one of these saints that is held in high regard of the Spanish conquistadors, and I still have yet to find any major threads on that, but just etymologically speaking, it's right in line. And then it's funny that the Austins are the ones who found themselves down there, getting the capital of the state named after them.
Yeah,
named after him and it. So that's a fun one.
Yeah, I should also mention on the point of the Charter Oak, Austin has this place called the Treaty Oak, which was, according to legend, a place where the Tejas tribe would meet. The Comanche also and the Tonkawa. They considered the grove of 14 trees a sacred area. And although they never hid any documents in it, it is a part of Texas history in a big way, these trees, because Mr. Austin allegedly met Native Americans in the grove to negotiate and sign Texas's first boundary. And then this was all because 2 children and a local judge were killed in Indian raids. So that was the violence that broke the camel's back. Well, let's not look at all the massacres that the Austinians did to the Native Americans before that. But anyways, yeah, so I think that's kind of interesting that the oak tree has this kind of presence in Connecticut and Hartford as like a major symbol of like, prominence and freedom. And then this guy who's literally from Connecticut's son founds Austin, Texas, and what do they have? Council oaks, treaty oaks. So definitely a interesting connection there. Also in 1989, somebody tried to poison the treaty oak. Oh wow, you found it. So some weirdo, I guess it turns out it was a lovesick occultist, tried to poison the treaty oak. And I think when I first heard about this, it was like a weird, I thought it had something to do with the JFK thing. And he was like a guy who was really angry about JFK and was trying to stick, but maybe I'm conflating 2 different stories here. So anyways, Ross Perot, the DuPont guy who, funny enough, made millions of dollars, billions of dollars probably off of herbicides. He funded the restoration effort to save the tree from this vandal, which is a funny word. Shouldn't you be called a tree murderer, arborcidist? Like you shouldn't be called a vandal. You tried to kill it. The guy gave the tree enough poison to kill 100 trees. So
wow,
yeah, it's pretty screwed up what this guy did to history. Who knows why? Maybe he was a lovesick occultist, or maybe he was angry about JFK. I don't know. Definitely, you got a reason to be angry in Texas about a bunch of things, I'm sure.
Oy.
So what do you think, Roman? You want to pass the mic to Chad, or are we going to get into the Capitol building first? What do you think, Chad? Do you have anything on the Capitol building, or should we talk about the skyline first?
I got just a few slides on the Capitol buildings. Nothing too historic. Just a couple points I make with it. So if you guys have anything else on the Capitol you want to show first, feel free.
No, go ahead. Well, yeah, I guess if you say so, I'll go first. But yeah, I have 1 or 2 things. I thought it was interesting. Did you guys notice that there's like an underground portion of the Capitol building? Did you guys see that, Roman?
Yeah, that's what I got into, is the underground rotunda.
Okay, cool. Oh. So yeah, maybe I'm getting ahead of you here when I show this slide, but let's see. Hold on.
Not at all, Mark. Not at all.
That's crazy, actually, because I just want to say this. One of the things, the stories about the hauntings of the Capitol building is the guy who, and his name is significant. It was another name sync. The guy who was painting the rotunda actually fell 3 stories through the glass pane onto his death.
What?
In the middle of the rotunda dome. Like, so he actually died right in the middle, which is funny because when we look at what these domes are used for, when they're used for burial rituals or when they're used for death rituals, it's actually the energy is supposed to go up and through the rotunda. And so this man who actually built this specific rotunda fell to his death 3 stories onto the center. Like, what? Oh man, this hermetic as fuck, dude. I love this.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, this is great, Mark.
So you saw there that it's above, so below. They have this star symbol that has the word Texas around it. And what's so interesting about it is, I mean, as Chad just said, it's underground. It's an underground rotunda. So I don't know, symbolically, other than as above, so below, what they could be talking about there, right? Like that's what came to mind for me immediately. Was as above, so below.
Me too, Mark.
Chat, yeah, you had that thought too, huh? Yeah, it's definitely.
Yep, it's on my slide, just like yours, says the same exact thing.
Hey, yeah, we see it. Butler Park, and we got this sort of spiral.
Yeah.
Just it looks just like High Point, the thing that Michael Wan talks about on the Susquehanna River. Didn't Emily say that last episode?
She did mention it, and she didn't get into it much, and I know she has before. But since we didn't get into it, I just want to point out this park briefly, because some of the other things we're going to look at only make sense when you view them from this park and from this exact area. So obviously the first thing you see at this park brought my attention to it was you have this artificial mound with a spiral walkway leading to the top of it. And right next to the spiral mound, you have a vortex looking spiral that's actually a water fountain. It's a playscape for the children. But, very obvious, there's vortex symbolism everywhere right here. So you see, you spiral your way up to the top of this mound. On the top of the mound, there's a big granite depiction of Texas. So once you get up there, you stand on this depiction of Texas and look at the cityscape. And I always like to point out with these fountains, every one of these special parks usually has a fountain where the children play. And this is the spot where you have your lightheartedness symbolism. There's nothing more lighthearted than a children playing out on a playground. And every one of these parks will have a fountain like this.
It reminds me of the
now, what I want to point.
Oh, sorry. Wizard of Oz too, like
no,
the Wizard of Oz. The when the fairy comes down and they walk the spiral, and then they go off on their journey.
There you go.
And it also reminds me of the spirals,
that's awesome.
like the that represent the goddess, and also that you see all over, and petroglyphs and stones and things, and
yep. And those are always symbolic of portals.
And the life force.
And you bring up the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
The life force, absolutely. And the Wizard of Oz vortex, here you go. They always have rainbow lights to go along with these vortex fountains. Almost every city I can think of that has these parks, Columbus, Chicago, Detroit, St. Louis, they all have this exact rainbow fountain for the kids to play in. But the reason I'm showing this park is because in a minute, I'm going to show you some of these buildings and the symbolism that only makes sense pretty much when you stand on top of this mound right here on the riverfront. But since we were talking about the Capitol, let's briefly look at the Capitol again. And I looked at the dome just like Mark, and same thing. As above, so below. On the Capitol dome, you have the pentagram. Directly below it, you have the pentagram within a pentagram, like Mark was saying. So obvious symbolism, as above, so below.
Well, not just that, but the dome, which is extending up into the sky, is opposed by the rotunda that's like literally sinking into the ground, right? I didn't even I didn't know that seal was directly under the, I'm glad you mentioned that, because now it's like three different seals. One in the middle, one in the upper realm, and one in the lower realm.
Exactly, man. You got one in the dome, one directly below the dome, and then one right outside in the inverted rotunda. So the symbolism is everywhere. And on top of the dome, you have this sculpture of Columbia, is what it's supposed to be, holding another star.
Now, did you catch the story
when they first?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, please.
Well, did you catch that they replaced that one? So I guess at some point in time they decided it was, too old. It was kind of deteriorating, so they craned the first one down, and then they had to get the help from like the Texas Coast Guard, I think, because they were the only ones with a helicopter strong enough to lift the 300-pound new statue on top of the rotunda. So yeah, now they have a new one that's like, even I think it's made out of a special type of mineral. So I wonder maybe if there's like an alchemical connection there with like changing it from one material to another,
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard that story actually. The one thing I noticed though, and I mean, this is obviously a relatively newer depiction, so I assume this is after they put the new one up there. So I assume this is the old one. But here's what I want to point out. Look close at this face. I mean, first look at the building. What a beautiful building.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you look close at this face,
Oh my
it just
God.
seems like they botched it.
Looks like a
You
man.
know what I'm saying?
It almost
And I
looks more
assume
like
this is the new one.
it almost looks more like Augustus, the Caesar
Yeah.
Augustus, than
You know-
it does the lady it's supposed to resemble.
I don't think that's the new one. I just by the photo quality in that, I'm gonna guess that that's probably a 70s, 80s.
Think that's the old one?
Yeah. Well, just look at the background. I mean, it could
I
be an
hope
old
so.
camera, but if you kind of look at like the way the scenery looks, kind of looks like an old movie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I hope so, because as beautiful as the building was, you know, that's a botch job. But I'll get back to him in just a minute, because the symbolism might mean something else. But like Mark was pointing out, as above, so below. Right out
Right.
front, you have
Yep.
a sunken rotunda. That's a identical inverted copy of the inside rotunda. On the floor, you have another pentagram. And there are, I forgot how many, but just a huge amount of underground office space. This whole project was supposed to be to add more office space to the Capitol. But once again, it's as above, so below. Here's inside the underground area. And just like Mark, you know, that's what came to my mind also. As above, so below. When they do this, they're trying to make a connection between realms, between this realm and the other realms. I mean, they are creating a portal and using this symbolism as a catalyst for all intents and purposes.
So I think you did find a picture
So-
of the new one, because the new one was replaced by, so it was a replica. It wasn't supposedly different. So if they botched the first one, they said, nope, it's classic. It's what's the word? It's whatever. But yeah, so the new one, that's the new one there. But the old one is in the Bullock, Texas
Yeah,
State History Museum.
Okay. So, you know, we looked briefly at the dome. We looked briefly at the inverted rotunda. Now, if you follow that axis directly north, right up to the university campus,
Nice.
it takes you to this building. And this is an art installation right at the entrance to the campus. And it's called Austin. That's the name of it. And it's by a gentleman named Ellsworth Kelly. And it is a temple of light for all intents purposes.
Wow.
The guy who created this was an atheist, and there's no religion assigned to this building whatsoever. So literally a temple of light. It says the structure is clad with 1,569 limestone panels from Spain.
What?
The interior stone flooring in the plaza is granite from Georgia. The entry door is made from a native Texas live oak tree, Mark, and it has 33 mouth-blown glass windows. And they're called the color grid, the starburst, and the tumbling squares. And like I said, it's just a temple of light. You go in here and you absorb
Wow.
from these 33 stained glass windows.
Limestone building.
When I go to Austin, I'm going here. Limestone building, granite floors,
Rainbows.
and rainbow colors just illuminating everywhere.
I think it's funny that they
You know?
emphasize that the limestone is from Spain, even though Austin is a fucking huge limestone quarry itself. Literally, they have their own cement. Like Austin cement is a limestone heavy. Like the history of this town is because of the limestone.
Right.
So why? But they got it from Spain. Like that seems like some.
Propaganda.
That's hilarious.
I think it's bragging rights. You know, a lot of these buildings like this, they're like, I got the floor from Spain. Spain, and I got the ceiling from Africa, and they'll just, I think a lot of it's bragging rights.
Yeah.
But, for our query, we got a limestone building with granite floors and rainbow spectrums blasting throughout where we can go in there and absorb them in an environment that's non-religious, which is very unusual. We can just call it a spiritual experience. It doesn't even have to be religious.
Especially when the base of cathedrals is built as a cross and the foundation of this place is also a cross. Shape like they're playing on all the cards there. Like that's so beautiful.
They're playing on all their cards, and it's a cross. It's a crossing point. We can look at a crossing point as a portal or an X portal or a cross portal. So they're playing on all the points. And remember, the Capitol building was pointing to that structure.
Right.
So, and that structure got me on this rainbow spectrum.
Oh.
Good, Mark.
Well, before we get away from the talk about granite and limestone, it is interesting to note that the state capitol building was built from pink granite that they got, or sunset granite, it's another term for it, that they got from Marble Falls, Texas. That's the state capitol. But they originally wanted to get it from another place, but there's too much iron in the granite, so they didn't want it to look too rusty. There's one other thing that I had queued up I was about to say on that note, but now it's escaping me.
I don't want it to look too rusty.
Yeah. But no, it's definitely, good sign
anytime. It has a rusty color too.
Yeah, it's always a good sign when you have limestone in an area, right? Like people tend to build civilizations in limestone areas. But the limestone, here's what I was going to say. So the limestone initially was going to be quarried from Oak Hill, but they decided not to because it had too much iron in it.
Oak.
Yeah.
Or from all the oak nuts and the tannins.
There's the oak again.
Okanagan.
Also, the state capitol was the largest barter trade in recorded history. The people who built the Texas state capitol, they traded the work for land. So most of the Texas panhandle was given to the guys who helped build, the builders of the original Capitol building, and that became the largest cattle ranch in the world, XIT Ranch. So the people who built the original, I don't know about
XIT?
The current Capitol building isn't included in that deal. The original Capitol building was much smaller and had more of a federal style. The one that is now the Capitol building has like an Italian Renaissance architectural style. But yeah, the largest barter transaction in recorded history, folks.
Oh, brah. Big Texas money, brah.
Texas is big. Wow. They get a lot of bigs. Oh, another thing, I'm just jumping all around here. When they built the Texas state capitol, it was billed as the 7th largest building in the world. I don't think that was actually true, but I think
it is larger than the United States Capitol building, though.
Yeah, well, and I think they were playing on the 7, though. Like there's something about the 7. Oh, we're the 7th largest in the world, the 7 wonders of the world. Like I think they were just being they're fibbing in order to get that 7 energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all I have to say for now.
Nice. Where are we at? Another portal point here, man.
So, another. After at the park, we seen the rainbow fountain, and then that went to see the rainbow.
There's 7 colors of a rainbow.
The rainbow cross. There's 7 colors of the rainbow. There's that 7 energy. There's 7 chakras, 7 colors of the rainbow. So I typed in Austin rainbow to see what else would pop up, and this is what popped up. This is a relatively new piece, and it's called a Tau Ceti, and according to the artist, it's named for a star in the constellation of Cetus, and it shares a similar infrared spectrum to our solar system's sun. So according to the artist himself, we have, this artwork. sharing spectrums of other realms, and you can go and stand right at the base of it and you get different perspectives.
Yeah,
So
like
I'm
a
just
number.
showing how this
Yeah.
rainbow energy, it's around Austin. It seems to be quite prevalent around Austin.
Oh, she was talking about that purple crown.
And
Did
Emily
anybody
Moyer
look into the
pointed
purple
out.
crown? Oh, those owls. She was saying there's like that purple crown imbued around
I
the
didn't look
city.
into it. I kind of wanted to save that for her.
Yeah. Yep.
I think she kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit, so I didn't want to, but she did talk about the owls, which led me down a rabbit hole, I once again just Googled Austin owls to see what pops up, and you had the owls next to the butterfly bridge that she pointed out. And of course, they stand on these dodecahedrons and these pentagons right here. We could, put pentagrams inside of them and have these owls standing on top of these pentagrams.
Huh.
But Austin Owls is also a basketball team.
Oh.
And I always like to check the graffiti because the graffiti is the pulse of what's in town. There's owl graffiti all over town.
Wow.
All over town.
Tara and I just saw an
and some
owl.
beautiful owl graffiti.
An owl swooped in front of our car this week, like a few days ago.
Oh, she got the Austin eyes watching you, bro.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Dude, I seen one. I went to Detroit yesterday and seen one just sitting in this tree staring at me as I drove by.
Oh, wow.
And then today when I picked up my son from school, the lady standing next to me turned and looked at me to say hi. And she had a neon green shirt with a giant owl just staring at me.
Wow.
She wondered why I was staring at her shirt.
Wow.
But yeah, this owl's literally got
like
the
that one.
reflection of the Capitol dome in his eyes. I thought that was kind of cool. But there's sometimes certain things are just meant to be in certain places, and it seems like owls are supposed to be in Austin. And this is a legend in Austin. Typed in Austin owl, and this is one of the first things that popped up. Is there's a legend that this building, the Frost Building, was built to be symbolic of an owl, and coincidentally has 33 floors.
It does.
Once that number keeps popping up, 33 floors. That other building had 33 windows. And it's quite similar. It's quite similar, only from certain angles. But it does have similarities.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Enough to where I got a
I'm
hold
not
of
even
it.
really a fan of Brutalist, but I love it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool. And if you look at the eyes of the building, they're almost like vortexes. They look like yellow vortex eyes.
Yeah.
I thought this was pretty cool. A building symbolic of an owl. And I actually got a hold of Emily and asked her, like, what's the deal with the building symbolic of an owl? And what Emily said was, that's only the half of it. She says, the building is actually symbolic of Anubis, but it's disguised as an owl.
What? Why would they do that?
I'm going to say it again.
Wow.
It's symbolic of Anubis, but disguised as an owl. It's hard to even wrap your mind around that. I've never said anything like that before. So, and I haven't got a chance to get back to her and what she means exactly.
That's not that hard to imagine, considering Anubis is the sort of like guardian of the underworld, and owls have that same reputation, right? They're sort of syncretistically associated.
They fly between realms, kind of thing.
Absolutely. Anubis, the weigher of the heart at Judgment Day, if your heart was lighter than a feather, determined if you could go on to the afterlife or if you had to be reincarnated. And, once she told me, I honestly haven't got back with her and asked her what she meant by it. But the first thing I did is I just started looking for Egyptian symbolism in town to see if I could come up with anything, And from the perspective of Butler Park, if you look across the river, there are 3 buildings capped by pyramids in the exact perfect alignment that the pyramids would be in Giza. And I mean, it's a stretch, but the one building itself has 3 pyramids on the pyramid building, almost pointing to it like this is a clue, And the other building, looks like a pyramid.
An owl in
If you look
Egyptian
at these buildings from
hieroglyphs is
another
the letter M,
perspective,
right?
that I don't know, but
I think so. Sorry.
But I don't, it might be a stretch. That wouldn't work from other perspectives around town, only looking from this side of the river, from Butler Park or nearby.
This one image you have
But
here.
that reminded me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we go back to that previous
Mark.
image real quick? So on this last slide, you have the sort of stair-like element of the front of the building. It kind of reminds me more of the South American pyramids and the Central American pyramids, and the way they integrate like the steps and the flat-sided.
Yeah.
They're kind of a blend between a ziggurat and a Egyptian, what we would call like a Giza pyramid, right? So
yeah, exactly.
And it makes sense with
it's
like
more of a ziggurat shape. It's
the structure and how the pyramids are built and what their functioning is meant for. Like if Austin is a portal city, or these buildings are like what you have on the next slide. It looks like to channel the energy.
Yep. Absolutely. It's it's the same thing as the Capitol building. Once again, it's as above, so below. And in this case, I think it was subconscious. I don't think that the architects of these three buildings got together and said, let's do a layout of the Giza pyramids. I think it happened because it was destiny, because it was supposed to. Most likely. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's really interesting, man. That the owl.
When you have the three pyramids. Yeah. Good, Roman.
Oh, sorry, I was lagging out a little bit. The owl symbolism, it is blowing my mind because, I mean, just symbolically speaking, it's one of the more magical creatures that exist. Like with so much lore and mystery behind the owl. And it's a cult like. Correspondences, and it's just so it's just blowing my mind right now. Austin has hit the threshold, man, and I just love the way how you put slides together, man. It is so beautiful. It makes me feel like a freaking slacker, man. I need to get my slide game up, son. You're killing it right now, man. Thank you so much, Chad.
Yeah, this is
just want
great.
To say that,
so
man.
We got
no worries, man. Appreciate it.
We got the three pyramids.
Owls are messengers, dude. I mean, that's
Yep.
what they're.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So we got the three
Blood
pyramids with the
spells.
goddess above it. Is this Nuit on the left here, and then we have the goddess of liberty on the right above the pyramids?
This is Osiris on the left.
Oh, okay.
And they usually use Osiris to represent the constellation of Orion. But I just want to point out, in his left hand, he has the scepter. In his right hand, he has the star.
Oof.
And this is pretty
lone
much
star, dude.
the same perspective where the Capitol would be. And remember, this kind of looked like a male-looking figure, and here he's holding a scepter and a star, so to speak.
Maybe it's Osiris.
It is coincidence and synchronicity, but it fits.
Do we have other pictures of Osiris paired up next to the goddess of liberty?
Well, you gotta remember too, like the goddess is usually supposed to be depicted as Isis anyway. A lot of times, so it's just like there's the Greek correlation. She's the same correlation to Isis, and Isis and Osiris after a certain point are also interchangeable. So I think there's that like type of hermetic fluidity of like, because after Osiris got separated into pieces, and then she had to insert the golden phallus. That's like the golden shaft. She gets interpreted, or by this time it could be the star. I think 100%, man. Like I think every time we see Lady Justice, it's Isis worship, in my opinion.
Yep. And when you see Osiris or Isis like this in the sky, holding the stars representing constellations, the Egyptians referred to them as star walkers. They were walking the dimension of the blessed. And I think this representation of Columbia, I think she's star walking too. She's standing on top of a dome that's as above, so below, with the pentagram right below her, and not two more pentagrams right below that. Pentagram in her hand. I think she's star walking. And she's star walking, right behind symbolic representations of pyramids, and I think all of this was possibly destined because I honestly don't think all of these architects got together and planned this out. I think this happened because it was supposed to, most likely. Mm. So that is my as above, so below, where the state capitol as well as these buildings possibly. I just have a few more slides. I like just to look at some of these sculptures and art around town.
Yeah.
I always check out the graffiti because I think that's a true another owl. Yeah, man. They're everywhere, I'm telling you.
Where do you see it in this one?
Graffiti is the true pulse of the town. Right in the middle.
Yeah, I see
just
it.
Just peeking out at you.
Right where that black line is down the center. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is called the Hope Outdoor Graffiti Gallery, and it's a giant pyramid. It's a giant pyramid of graffiti. Yeah, but if I go to Austin, this will be a place I want to go and check out. I love this kind of stuff. But this, the art on these walls will change monthly. So you can catch the vibe of a city at a current time when you go to a place like this. So you got some pyramids up here, and all kinds of cool stuff.
The mood of a city.
Other graffiti around town. Yeah, I thought this blue cat in his purple robe with flying saucers was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, blue cat.
When you're going down the rabbit hole, one thing I've noticed is you will find rabbit sculptures. You will find rabbit paintings. Almost every city I looked at will just have a random white rabbit somewhere. This one was no different.
Wow.
This great big spider sculpture. I didn't even have a chance to find out the artist's name, but I thought it was pretty cool considering the weaving spiders and
yeah.
Orb
came
like
up
eggs.
Yikes.
Yeah.
A lot of underworld symbolism if we're going into the owl and we're going into like this he's super like shadowy type of portally place, like really feel like you're going through like with all the owls and the bunnies everywhere and
subconscious, like you were saying, Chad.
Yeah,
that's it. Subconscious.
And
going into underworlds, and guys like this, we're looking at the upper worlds. We're combining the two in a city that may be a catalyst between the two. I mean, that's kind of the conclusion I'm coming up with. Like Emily pointed out, I think Austin is a gateway experience. I think that it's taking place. And this is Tom Friedman's Looking Up, and this guy has this sculpture all over the world. He has like 3 or 4 of these, and he moves them around to different cities and different locations.
Temporarily?
So this was in 2015. Some are temporarily and some stay.
Oh, okay.
So I was trying to figure out today. I don't know if the one stayed in Austin or if it moved. I'm not sure, to tell you the truth.
Well, this is a good opportunity to
33 feet tall.
Well, this is, sorry to cut you off. This is a good opportunity to mention something that Michael Wan gave me this idea. I was talking to him on the phone, and I think it's a brilliant idea. So I know you guys are going to love it. If you're listening from Austin, figure out for us this month of December, we're going to be talking about just Austin, right, guys? So if anybody listening lives in Austin, lives in Texas, within a drive of Austin, send us some questions, send us some clues, go around and look at some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about this month, and get in touch with us, esotericamericapodcast@gmail.com, or on Instagram at esotericamerica. Of course, you can hit us up in our Telegram. Roman's got his own Rising from the Ashes Telegram. I know he's always up in there, and I, of course, am in the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy Telegram. But yeah, definitely a lot of strange art. I have some art too that I want to show, but continue, Chaz. I just wanted to, Chad. I always want to call you Chaz because of the Chaz of the Dead guy, but I know your name is Chad. Chad, please keep going because I know you got some interesting stuff here.
I'm pretty close to the end here. I just wanted to bring this guy up because, like Roman pointed out, we have all this underworld symbolism, and I see this guy, and I think, he's looking at the upper worlds. And the one thing this sculpture does is if you walk up to the sculpture, you're gonna look up, and then you're gonna look up higher to see what he's looking at. So it's the same symbolism. And once again, he's 33 feet tall. There's that number again. And he's a giant. He's a 33-foot tall giant with an elongated skull. For all intents
Holy
purposes.
shit. Did you find out anything on this artist specifically?
He's looking up at the heavens.
The artist. Did you get anything on this guy?
No, not. I didn't really have time to dig into any of the artists, really. Like the spider, I don't even know who made it yet. All I got to the point was his name and that this monument, he has several of them and he moves them around. Like right now, I know for a fact there's one downtown New York somewhere. And that's about all I know at this point.
I wonder if he lines it up like celestially, like specifically, because he's looking up at something. So I wonder if it's, like at a certain time he's moving them around to the town because he's following some sort of sky map of sorts. Like I'm very curious about this guy now. I'm gonna have to look up who this artist is because that's super cool, man. That's super cool. That's super cool, man. I love that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Roman, would you do me a favor and open up?
That's what I got for this week.
Right on.
That was awesome. That was amazing.
Roman,
as always.
Could you open up the first message I just sent in the chat, the one that says Landmarks Circle Tower?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, please share your screen. Show us where I'll take us through, because if I share my screen, it's going to be another mess over here. So just share those links I have in the chat, because a few of them are definitely interesting. I was surprised to not see these in what you had to share, Chad. So this is the circle tower, 8-sided, sort of portal-like in a way.
Nice.
The next one is another portal. If you go to the next chat submission, Roman, the one that says square tilt.
Oh, another site, not like on the same site. Oh,
yeah, no, they're all just links in the chat in the Zoom chat.
I only opened up one. I'm so terrible. Hold on.
It's all right.
Give me one more sec here. Shablap. And one more second. Oh, shablap. Sometimes you have to shablap in the open air to make the portals come quicker, Here we are. This one.
Yes. So this one, the artist explicitly says it is a portal. It's designed to be a portal. A lot of his work is portal-like. Joel Perlman. I don't know where this is. It's on the University of Texas campus.
There we
Austin.
go.
And interesting to point out that the next one that I have, you can pull up, the Littlefield Fountain, is right in that same line of sight that you just showed us, Chad, with the outdoor sculpture or outdoor art exhibit, the Light Church. So this is very interesting. Initially, there was supposed to be a obelisk behind these characters in the center there, but because of the time period, people were kind of upset that they were depicting Confederate heroes in these statues. And there's a bunch of memorials to the Confederate troops and all these different Confederate figures along the Texas State Capitol and the Texas University. The other one that I pulled up, Roman, the hiker, if you show this. So the hiker is really interesting because the term hiker comes from the soldiers that participated in the Mexican-American War, the Philippines War, the Spanish-American War, the Philippine-American War, and and the Boxer Rebellion in China. But they have them originally at the University of Minnesota, and there's a bunch in Michigan too. I recently learned about this through Steven Snyder, past guest on our show, his podcast, The Farm, Mach 2. He had a guest on from Michigan who was talking about all the strange military fascism connections in Michigan, and he was talking about this hiker statue and how the hikers were these guys who were rugged and they'd go out and fight these wars, kind of like mercenaries to a certain extent. I don't know if they were explicitly mercenaries, but they had that kind of reputation of being like rugged and tough and going to these sort of small skirmish type wars. But yeah, the hiker, I think there's going to be a theme with this on this show. If you live in an area where you have a hiker statue, look into it and see why, see what the story is, and maybe we'll find out over the course of this show that there's like a reason why the hikers are in certain places. Maybe there's like a pattern or something that emerges. I don't know, but I think it's...
You have the coordinates exactly for like each of them too, all the parallels of all of them.
Yeah, it'd be easy for someone to plot out if they wanted to take the time to put it on the map. Ooh, I see Shamokin, Pennsylvania. I like that place. Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of them all over the place, and I'm just pointing that out now that I think we're going to see these hiker statues come up in future episodes. But yeah, there's a hiker statue on the Capitol building, state grounds, amongst many other pieces of outdoor art, public art.
Man,
and then the other one,
this one for a second.
Well,
this one is tight.
Before we get to this one, there's the 7 Mustangs. I don't think I sent you a link for that one, Roman, but the 7 Mustangs is another example of this 7 symbology. We have the 6 seals, right?
Yep.
7, the 7th largest, and then the 7 Mustangs. So, and I think the 6 seals, although it is the number 6, the whole seal itself could be thought of as 1. So that would be the 7 in a certain understanding of numbers. So, yeah, the horseman is definitely an apocalyptic symbol, right? But it's also a Sagittarian symbol for balancing the mind and the body. Anytime you see like a horseman.
Mm-hmm. There's like 7, isn't there 7 rays in astrology?
In theosophy,
yes.
There's 7 rays of ascension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And esoteric astrology, which is like a cool group of astrologers. They're like theosophists, but astrologists. And then they have this thing literally called esoteric astrology. And they've been making documentaries for the past 20, 30 years, but they're really good. And that is a thing and that is called the 7 rays.
Yeah.
Super
cool.
But I was going to say too, there's a lot of lore of the horsemen were what the guys who conquistadored their way into Texas, known as the 4 horsemen. And I found that story kind of coming up again when I was looking up, the history of Austin. And so I think that was really interesting seeing them riding out of the water as if, we're talking about there being that hermetic up and down, that kind of that focal point of this energy where, what is this here? Oh, the 7 horses?
That's what I thought of when we were thinking of horses and the forces.
Kind of looks like the statue too.
And
The Littleton.
Sagittarius.
It looks like the Littleton fountain, a Littlefield fountain.
Yeah, straight up. The and the spider too. I mean, it was kind of symbolic. It can be Odin was known to ride his 8-legged horse, and it was a black horse. Sounds a lot like a spider, and that was how he would his Merkabah traveling throughout the Yggdrasil or throughout the universe. So there's that spider portal symbolism, horse, 8-legged horse symbolism, which is there when it with the Capitol Rotunda of the George Washington and the Odin crossover. It's like there's a lot of this Norse worship and the heavy occult, man. Like, but it's like it's kind of, like a lot of it's Greek, but then they have this like Odin worship like kind of tied throughout as a theme, which is really interesting. Like the Greek and the Norse. I don't know. I'm just saying
They
shit over here,
connect?
man.
Well, yeah, it's definitely.
There's also the Greek 8 winds tower.
Ooh, yeah.
That's in the magic book.
Yeah. What's the connection?
Magic, I don't remember. Magic in the Landscape book.
No, I know. But what are you connecting it to that we're talking about right now?
Oh, just like, I don't know, because we were talking about 8 horses, forces, like I was saying, or 8, and what we were saying, right?
Well,
Sorry.
Augustus was known as Octavius, and Augustus, Augustine, Austin, Octavius, 8, Caesar.
Okay.
Maybe
Augustine.
8
Yeah.
Octavia.
Austin, Augustine. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Okay. So 8, and then that was he's
you were the 4
Roman.
emperors. Weird. Assassinated in 44 BC.
Roman, pull up the Littlefield fountain again. The picture of the Littlefield fountain. So it's a figure of Columbia. That's who's depicted as Columbia.
Mhm.
And there's an eagle somewhere there. I don't know where. I don't see the eagle. Maybe it's just this angle. There's also it's a ship. There's like a ship behind those horses. And they're actually not horses. They're called hippocamps, 2 of which are mounted by mermen. Wow. Okay, so we're looking at 3 hippocamps mounted, 2 of them mounted by mermen. The group represents American armed forces sailing overseas to defend democracy in the Great War, surrounded by symbols of American strength and unity. The limestone wall behind the fountain bears 2 bronze plaques. One is inscribed, "These sons and daughters of the University of Texas gave their lives to their country in the World War," followed by 2 columns of names listing all University of Texas students and alumni killed in the Great War. Wasn't the University of Texas the first campus where there was a school shooter? Am I remembering that incorrectly?
Yes, 1966.
So it's fascinating how many war monuments are in this area of Austin, like from the Capitol building to the university campus, which are obviously, as we saw earlier, aligned with each other in a straight line. And there's all these war monuments, just men with guns, guys on horses, like all of this stuff. And it really speaks to what Ross Ben talks about with his Philadelphia concepts of like the living artwork, like statues being like living art in a city, and how
it's in water, it's in moving water, so it's like literally moving.
This one, yeah, but I mean all of the other ones too, like the guys holding guns and whatnot. I mean those are literally if we're following the line of logic, like those statues are inhabited by spirits, of some kind, whether it's
a homunculi.
Well, whether it's like the ghost of the Confederate soldier it's depicting, or whether it's like some kind of like ancient energy archetype that the art is sort of hinting at, whether it's like the god or goddess Columbia or some sort of Egyptian parallel to her. I mean, who knows? There's so many different interpretations of art and mythology in that way, but it's definitely makes you think. I have a list over here of like all of the public art in the area, and it's a big list. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. There's like at least 50 to 60 different outdoor sculptures in this one small area of Austin, Texas. There's even a Willie Nelson statue.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other thing we didn't even get into is like the giant music worship that goes on here, and that whole, uh, that's very relevant to the animation and the life and the energy and kind of like using this heavy energy. It's here. I mean, I try to look at what parallel this was on. It's not on the 33rd parallel, but it is on the 30th parallel, and I think that there's still a lot of that heavy electromagnetic energy going on, especially if this used to be a limestone quarry, used to be the home of ancient historic, very ancient lands and mammoths and all the things. And then, possibly even like, the remnants of Atlantean goodness, the time, the antediluvian world. Like, I think Texas probably was, one of these major lands, man. And people find so much stuff when they you can like go still find a bunch of Clovis points all around Texas. People find things all the time. One episode we got to do at some point, y'all, is Chaco Canyon. Chaco Canyon in New Mexico.
Yeah, no,
Oh, you just brought that up.
Yeah, we were looking through a book earlier on ancient America, and I'm like, where's Chaco Canyon? Oh, okay, not in Texas, but definitely interesting sync there. Definitely. Yeah, I think
he just bought property right outside Chaco Canyon. He's like, come on through.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I think if you guys agree, can you not do that?
Sorry.
If you guys agree, we'll talk about Austin for the rest of the month. I think it's a fascinating place. Like I said, we could have our audience, whoever's listening, YouTube or on the podcast, hit us up. Let us know what you think of Austin. Even if you're not from there or close to there, you could still write in questions if you have any. So please participate. We'd love to include as many people as we can as we survey Esoteric America. But I think we're about at the end for Austin today. I think we'll go back to Austin next episode, and yeah, we'll see what comes next, because we just sort of touched on a bunch of stuff today. I'm sure there's still more to get into. What do you guys think?
I didn't even go through half of my tabs, dude. There's plenty more.
Right on. Right on. All right. Well, final thoughts before we wrap up. Anybody?
Chad.
I think it's cool, man, how we all came in separately, did some history, did some modern art and architecture. I like this format where we do our separate things and bring it together and see how it all correlates. It was a pretty cool show. Look forward to doing it again. I had a fun time doing it this whole week, so I like this format.
Me too.
Agreed.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy like that really specific. I have a very specific way I like to look up stuff of towns, and I figure it out, and like I really find myself just getting hooked on all these like old white dudes that were just like they're all Masons basically, but I'll stick to that stuff because it's fun. And anyways, I had a great time. You guys are the best. Thank you everybody for listening. Thank you guys. This is a sweet little family community here, and we're coming all over. We're going all over the country, and it's amazing.
Yeah, we got a question on your Slow Burn Sunday from a listener. Shout out to Morgan. She said, are you guys going to do every state? And I was like, yeah, if we have time, we're going to get to every state eventually. We're going town by town. So if we can get a town in every state by, the first year of doing this, it'll be cool. But we don't really have any kind of expectations like that. We're just going to go with whatever comes to us, right? I mean, Emily wanted to talk about Austin. That got us into this Austin stuff. I say we have so much more to cover because, like, Austin has this reputation, especially nowadays, for being weird, right? It's keep Austin weird. Maybe it was weirder in the past. So I think I'm going to dig into like the counterculture, the subculture of Austin, and see if we find anything. It's also interesting to note that the Tejanos of Texas, that word eventually became the word Texan, and it originally meant friends or allies. It comes from the Caddo people's language. The Caddo people were the ones that built the mounds out in that portion of Texas that we were talking about towards the beginning. So, yeah, Texas, it means friends.
I want to say one thing. Also, that's amazing. Thank you, Mark, because we're all friends and
that's why I said it.
Love Texas. But when it comes to like the Keep Austin Weird slogan, that's the same slogan that has been going on in Portland for at least a bare minimum of 25 years.
So are you trying to say that Austin stole keep it weird from Portland?
Well, no,
are you trying to start a city-to-city beef on this show right now?
The sync is this. No, remember I told you guys I found a bunch of really great. First of all, hey, I am from Portland. Okay,
I know.
I'm from that town. So obviously,
I know you're from Portland, Hawaii. You're from California.
Listen. Okay, so here's the name sync, and then this is the last one I want to do. So I was telling you guys about the guy who fell off of the rotunda while he was painting it and died.
Oh, yeah. Right? You told us.
And there's this crack in the middle of the floor, in the middle of the star in the middle of the Capitol building floor is cracked. But he fell 14. There's your reduction 4 again. He fell 14 years before the floor was actually made, but there's still a crack there. So the crack didn't come from him, but it is the spot that he died. And so it's very weird that the crack came later after he had died 14 years later, supposedly. But the sync that's funny is his name was Ed Wheeler. And the mayor of Portland, famously for years, the most famous Portland mayor is Ted Wheeler. So I thought that was kind of
funny. The guy who designed Austin was Ed Waller. So you have Ed Waller, who builds Austin, and then you have Ed Wheeler, who sacrifices himself while painting the Capitol Rotunda. That crack, too, when you said that, it made me think of the Barclones fault that is like this ancient, fissure crack into the surface of Texas, just showing like how old and unchanged that place is,
Well, that's interesting too, because there's a lot of talk about Texas being just like almost completely hollow anyway. With all of these salt caverns they have there, these old just hollow pockets that are all throughout Texas, and then it having both, it has like the water that erodes in, and some say there's definite tunnels underneath the Capitol building. There's a lot of lore of obviously they have that rotunda that faces down, which is really fascinating. But there's stories that there's a bunch of Spanish gold stashed underneath the Capitol building, and so you have this crack in the floor, being like, "Oh, is this fucking hollow? Like, why is this crack? Like, why can't you guys fix this crack? This should be easy, yet you're keeping the crack around." And somebody died right on that fucking spot.
Well, it's like the old thing they did in temples, where they would sacrifice a spirit or person to be the spirit of the temple. I mean, they still do it in Thailand. I think I've said that on this show before.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Straight up. So that was fun. Ed Wheeler, Ted Wheeler. And there's another Ed Wheeler who was a famous baseball player too. Name syncs, like people fill their archetypal roles by what names they have, no matter what. It's a part of the cosmic code, part of the emulation, man. Okay, your name plays an important part of it, so you got to own it. You got to take your name and you got to shape it to be yours, baby, because you can change it. You can transmute it. You can shape it. You can shift it.
Yeah, you've shifted your name from Roman to Broman.
No. You gotta edit that part out, man. That's terrible. No. See, here's the deal. I have trauma with that name, okay? Specifically, okay?
No, it's cool. It's like, hey, Roman, my broman, what's up?
All right, see, when you use it in a flow like that, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's all. But anyways, all right. Well, Tara, Chad, any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Well, I enjoyed it, guys.
Yeah.
I look forward to next week
It
and
was
seeing what
fun.
everybody digs up.
Tasting the rainbow.
Yeah, chasing the rainbow,
Hey,
baby.
Tara, I feel like you're like trying to hype man Chad there. You're like, yeah, tasting the rainbow. Okay, well, I love
And
it.
take
all
it.
of
I'll
us.
take it.
Yeah,
Hell
you too,
yeah.
Chad. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah.
No, it's just the
Yeah.
way you jumped in on how he was saying it. It's great.
Let's find more
I'm
portal
a good
symbolism.
hype
Let's go. All the portals. Like, let's keep following the Stargate portals, man, because that's where we're headed, baby. Very, very soon.
Well, ladies and gentlemen listening, thank you for tuning in to Esoteric America, and enjoy your exploration of wherever you find yourself in this Esoteric America. Like I said, get in touch with us on Instagram, Esoteric America, or at Gmail, Esoteric America podcast at gmail.com. Peace.